This wonderful Friday morning to Markets Insight. I am Lavina Emma. During the week, we had different discussions with our guests on issues affecting the commodity market and solutions to these issues, from domestic crude oil supply to agricultural products for exports, the foreign currency rates, and the rising cost of living. The federal government is deeply concerned about the plight of its citizens and has urged major commodity traders to make their food reserves available. So, on today's show, we will discuss opportunities that abound to solve the high cost of living. So join us after the break.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Juliet Benite.
I'm Godio Didi.
My name is Professor Oladokun Sulaiman Olarawaju.
Sook News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to Sook News.
So I'm happy that Sook TV has come into existence.
I'm happy to be here in the Sook News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think Sook News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and Sook News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching Zook News.
Keep watching Sook News. It's a place to be.
Keep watching Sook News.
Welcome back to the show. So I'm being joined this morning by a very interesting guest who could shed more light on this issue. Mr. Sam Orujuwe is a Director, Research Policy and Development, Sook News. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Okay. So, sir, we have been discussing from the beginning of this week issues affecting the Nigeria commodities market, and we've also discussed ways we can solve these issues. But we want to go further and discuss the opportunities that abound. Recently, about not so long ago, there was a survey that was given that the average Nigerian lives below $1. And right now, coupled with the high cost of living, I'm quite sure a lot of people can't afford some basic needs or necessities. So, sir, would you please shed more light on this issue coupled with that, and ways by which we could also really solve these issues and tackle them for real, because it's been going on for quite a while now.
All right. To put it in perspective, the issues with cost of living has to do with the expenses that the average consumer spend on food, housing, and some other basic things that you need to live a quality life to some extent. But then generally with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics data that was released recently, the cost of living has gone astronomically upward. To that extent, it has become a major challenge. The rate of inflation as of December 2023 was put at about 28.9%, and that of the food inflation higher than that. So it's become a major challenge for the average citizen to be able to even live up to that $1. If you convert it, it becomes challenging to have a decent living.
Okay, sir, what policies can the government introduce, for instance, partnering with more multinational and private institutions to be able to uplift the common man on the street and ensure that he has a more adequate standard of living as opposed to living below $1 every day?
Yeah, I think the issue is, one, we need to reduce the dependence on foreign goods. Two, we need to find a way to support the agricultural value chain so that food security can be sustained in the country. So the government, on the one hand, need to find a way. This emergency relief posture of the government may not really solve the problem. So those who took loan from the Central Bank of Nigeria to do farming, and we don't have those food items coming into the market, becomes a major problem. Furthermore, I think there's a need to increase access to market, and that is important because some of the food item produced can't even find their way into the marketplace. So it's a whole lot of challenge, and that the government and the private sector need to look inward to see how they can solve
And welcome back from that short break. I apologize for the break in transmission. So I'm still here with my guest, Mr. Sam Urujuwe, and he has been explaining to us what Nigeria can benefit from the federal government partnering with the private sector to help us improve, to help us end the high cost of living in the society. So please, sir, over to you.
As we were speaking earlier, what is important is that the government must find a way to provide an environment that can make people to do business. To the double-digit loan that people take to farm is very high. That will affect a greater majority of people that are into farming. Two, the private sector must find a way as well to support the government in providing necessary input, particularly to farmers, so that we can have what you call food security. But the government current approach to resolving the issues of try to do emergency by releasing grains from the reserve, I don't think that's the best way to resolve the issues. So we look at it from the support to the farmers, find a way to drop the rate of inflation. That will help. Then improve on the access to markets so that the commodities can come to the major cities. Then find a way, in addition to that, to see how we can use commodity boards to take some of those products from the farmers. So to that extent, we can help to reduce the negative impact on the cost of living on the average citizen.
Okay, thank you for that. But there was something you mentioned while you were talking. You said we needed to reduce our over-dependence on foreign goods. We know that in this country we have a lot of foreign goods that we import, that we use on a daily basis. But we also know that to improve on our agro-produce exports, we also need to stop depending on these foreign goods. But how do we cope as a country when we actually have some very important foreign items that we need on a daily basis to survive? And we would imagine if, for example, we cut off our supply of imported rice. I mean, it's not too many Nigerians like the locally grown grains in the country. That's rice, for example, and it won't really sit well with us. So how do we just suddenly reduce our dependence on foreign goods?
No, as a people, we must resolve that for us to improve on our standard of living, not cost of living,
yes,
we must finally find a way to look inward by consuming the goods that we produce. That will enhance productivity, and the price of some of those commodities that is affecting the cost of living will be reduced to some extent. So the point that I'm trying to make here, or I'm canvassing, is that beyond the government trying to find a way to provide some level of a single-digit loan to farmers and even to industry will help, but our own peculiarity, why we should consume our own goods and services, will equally help to reduce the cost of living, particularly on food.
Okay, yes. But going further, would you also agree with, yesterday my guest, I discussed with him the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor's speech when he was called in front of the House of Representatives, and how he said that it is possible to bring down inflation to 21.4%. Yes, we know the federal government is putting measures in place to be able to curb this, but being very realistic currently, do you think it's something that can happen maybe in a few weeks' time? Because this high cost of food all over the country is causing protests. There were protests in Minna, in Niger State, and also in Kano. So do you think this is going to be feasible within a short period?
The federal government has already set up a committee to look at that. So as a committee, including the Minister for Finance, let's see what they can quickly put on the table. But essentially, even 21 point something percent inflation, I think to me is unacceptable for us to do good business in Nigeria. So the government should find a way to drive the inflation less than that. We had in this country maybe barely about 10 years ago where we have about 9.8%.
That's wonderful. The standard of living must have been very good.
No, inflation rate.
Inflation rate,
so
yes, it wasn't.
The cost of living was not as high as this.
Not as high as
the dollar to the naira was relatively okay. So the government should find a way to drive down the rate of inflation, particularly food inflation, which is even higher than the average inflation. If you look at the consumer price index, is particularly worrisome that people cannot even afford some basic items. Take, for example, this time last year, a crate of egg was sold for about 1,200. But as we speak, a crate of egg, just 30 pieces, is selling in some places 3,200, 3,400, in supermarket 4,000.
Yeah, so I was
so
going
that
to mention
cannot even
that. Yeah.
sustain an average family for a month. When we talk about rice, the bag of rice is about 40-something thousand.
It's more than
So these are just basic food item. So is really worrisome, and that the government has to. But I'm of the view that this emergency response by bringing grains from the reserve will not resolve the problem. We should find a way to see how we can bring lending to a reasonable
Welcome back. I apologize for the break in transmission. So I'm still here with my guest, Mr. Sam, and we're still discussing on ways we can tackle the high cost of food and the high cost of living in Nigeria. So please, Mr. Sam, before the brief break in transmission, we're talking about the best policies that could be adopted. You mentioned we should stop our dependence on foreign goods. We should also be able to reduce inflation. And I mentioned to you that during the week, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the governor was invited to speak to the House of Representatives, and he mentioned that inflation will be reduced to 21.4%. So I said, how feasible is this? And you were giving me your reply before we went on break.
Yes, I was saying even at 21-point-something%, that is not good enough to sustain. So beyond the government aspect of it, generally we need to adjust what you call the cost of living adjustment, called COLA, C-O-L-A, COLA. We need to do that in line with the current inflationary trend, so that then the minimum wage issue needs to equally to be addressed by the private sector employer and the government. Maybe to some extent, once an adjustment is made on the cost of living, those adjustments will help to cushion the effect of the negative impact on the consumer pricing index. So if the government is able to have his hand towards some of these incentives that we just spoke about earlier, maybe there will be improvement. But it's equally essential that citizens must find a way to look inward so that they consume what we produce. And you were mentioning to me that off air that even the average price I talked about in terms of rice is even far higher than that. So it depends on where you are buying from, which market. So if you live in an upscale area, I think the price should be more than the average price. So what I used was an average price, so that we cannot have a blanket price for everybody.
Okay. I agree with what you're saying. Like, if we are living in maybe places like Lagos on the island, and also in more expensive cities like Abuja, you know, the prices of food items in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt will be very high, as opposed to maybe if you were living in the middle belt states or in other western parts of Nigeria, it won't be so expensive. So going further, I would also like to ask, what kind of infrastructure developments do you think can also aid Nigerians to reduce the high cost of living, the high cost of food? Because recently we've been talking about how we need to have things like improved roads, good electricity, stable electricity to help us in this country. We also needed cheaper housing rates, as right now things like that are so expensive for the average Nigerian. So how can the government also help us to put up better infrastructure to aid this lower cost of living in the country?
I think for me, the government should invest more in the rural areas to reduce rural-urban migration. That's one of the major challenges. The road networks must be improved upon, particularly rural infrastructure, so that what you call access to the market become very easy, because some of the commodities and food items that we talk about can't even find your way into the urban area. So that to a large extent affects the price of food items. So that's on the government side. So that's important. Then for research institutes, they should improve in terms of the yield that we can get from some of these agricultural products, so that that again may likely drive down the cost of living. So a holistic approach is required to address the high cost of living that we currently experience in Nigeria.
So our ministers, our governors, both at the federal and state level, need to all come together to actually put better infrastructure for its citizens all over the country, north, south, east, and west.
Yes, the point is that, in my view, the governors are actually paying lip service to the cost of living in Nigeria. They quickly run to the federal government, and they are trying to have an emergency response. And we are not in a humanitarian crisis situation. But then, what can we do differently as a people and as a government to improve on the lifestyle, even the way we do business? So if we're able to address this critical sector or these critical issues, then the cost of living might just go down. But if we do things the same way we've been doing them, then this challenge will be with us for a very long time.
Okay, so sir, brother, please, let me just pause for now with questioning you. I would like to invite our guest on Zoom. He has been waiting for us. So our next guest joining us on today's show is Mr. Emmanuel Abusin. He's the CEO of Trema Agro Services and the Executive Director, Pan-African Institute of Agri-Business Management. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Emmanuel Abusin. Is he on the show now? Welcome to the show, Mr. Emmanuel Abusin. I hope you can hear me.
The audio. I can't hear you. Your audio.
Clearly. Okay, while our technical crew resolve the audio issues, I will still go further with Mr. Sam right here in the studio. So still on, okay, I think Mr. Emmanuel Abusin can hear me now. Welcome to the show, Market Insights, Mr. Emmanuel Abusin, and we're happy to have you on the show, joining our guest in the studio, Mr. Sam. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. So we're talking about how we can tackle the high cost of living with our main focus on food. So I would like to ask you, as a farmer and also someone who has invested highly in agriculture, what opportunities exist in the agricultural sector that could considerably lay a very good impact in improving the standard of living of Nigerians?
Okay, I think we need to look at critical situations like mechanization, farm mechanization, then also security. I think we are not paying attention to security as we should do when we look at how it is impossible for some farmers to go to the farm, especially in areas like Zamfara, other states, but Zamfara are quite very pronounced, where it imposed tax on farmers. Then the situation currently in the Nigerian market is what I would call market shock. It's a shock that are based on some factors like, again, insecurity. More of the prophecies we're receiving that there's going to be famine. So a level of hoarding, people are hoarding so that they can sell at a better price, because there are projections that farmers will not be able to go to farm. And if this happens, we're going to have food shortage. Then we also look at the global market, that we have global food crisis from the war in Russia and Ukraine, that are one of the major suppliers of grains, especially wheat. Wheat, over 60% of our food is made from wheat, like in Indomie, noodles, spaghetti, bread, and most of our foods are made from wheat. So these are some of the challenges that we need to look at. And again, like I said, we need to start looking at mechanization in Nigeria. Agriculture in Nigeria is not mechanized, it's under mechanized. It's more of manpower, and manpower cannot drive us the result we're looking at, because it's not even sustainable and it's not sufficient for us to talk about food sufficiency and food security.
Okay, Mr. Emmanuel, yes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, you talked about insecurity in the rural areas. You also talk about we need to have proper mechanization of farming. But yes, in some certain farms, these things are being obtained. But, you know, we would actually want something more, how do I put this now? We need something more practical, actually, that will, because I was also talking with my guest in the studio of a partnership between the federal government and the private sector to harness our agricultural sector even better, and he offered, so what kind of more positive solutions, more practical solutions rather, can you offer for us to reduce the cost of living in the country?
Okay, practical solution is farmers having access to loan, because the current intervention from the government to release grains to the public from the reserve is temporal, because when we release this grain, it looks like we're solving our immediate food. But the next question is, how are we going to refill it back? How do we reserve food back when people are not farming? Then price control. I will look at price control. If we can do more of price control in the market, it might cushion the effect. Because when we fight for wages, that increase of wages, one of the things we might likely have is wage price spiral, meaning as soon as wages is increased, cost of living also increases, cost of production, cost of product also increase. So basically, we need access to credit. Nigeria access to credit is very, very low, and we cannot keep looking at short-term solutions to a long-term challenges. It's not going to do well. Then private government relations and public partnership, it's something that we are having level of challenges in achieving this because of leakages. Let's say, for example, the Ango program, that over 1.1 trillion naira was set by CBN to be disbursed for farming, for Ango program. The result could not be achieved because of leakages. We need to address leakages. We need to also address the issue of corruption. As long as corruption is not addressed, we are going to be having temporary solutions. And let me say, our solutions are going to be, it's going to be more of cosmetic solutions, and it will not last. So we need access to credit for farmers. We still go back to the issue of security, then also price control. To a level, we need price control. A typical example was during the new Naira design program that cost Nigeria to be short on cash. Many POS operators were the one determining the price, how much they charge users as customers. But some states like Lagos State, Ogun State, for example, Ondo State, government had to intervene to control price, so that it will not be a burden. It's not going to be a burden to the citizens. So the government need to start looking at price control. Then also encourage some regulations, monetary regulations that will also attract a level of investment, and we'll see how some of these issues can be solved.
Okay. Okay, just before we go, I would like to ask both my guests this very important question. Nigeria is blessed with arable land, both in the north, in the south, in the east and west. So how do we capitalize on Nigeria's rich resources to create economic opportunities that can elevate the high cost of living? I'll start with Mr. Sam.
I think the guest just spoke to,
yes, to that.
Access to credit. Which is very important. So once you have access to credit, that will improve. So more investment in terms of the opportunities that you can provide within the agricultural value chain. So once there are more investment, then you can drive the cost of living drastically down based on those massive investment. And as mentioned earlier, in addition to access to credit, beyond the access, the lending rate, when you won't have access to credit, must be single digits, so that can increase the volume of investment in that sector.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sam, for joining us this morning in the studio. And also, Mr. Emmanuel, thank you so much for joining us and your contributions to today's program. So after the break, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Emmanuel. It was good to have you on the program. So after the break, we'll talk about the parallel market. So please stay tuned.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souk News. Here's the Souk News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souk News. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll be having our rates from the parallel market as it's currently showing on the screen. So today the dollar is currently buying at 1,495 naira, and it's selling at 1,500 naira. The pounds is currently buying at 1,875 naira, and it is selling at 1,890 naira, and the euro is currently buying at 1,565 naira, and it is selling at 1,585 naira. So that's the parallel market for this morning. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Market Insights, where I was able to talk with my guests on ways by which we could elevate the high cost of living in the society with our focus on food. As you all know, this country is blessed with arable lands in the north, in the south, in the east and west. So like my guest, Mr. Emmanuel, said, if we can mechanize farming, if we can also make loans available to farmers in single digits, as my guest, Mr. Sam, also mentioned. So these ways we can also create investment opportunities for more young people to participate in agriculture. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Market Insights. Do stay tuned for the next program.